Yes, indeed, it is a celebration on the show. Now, who or what are we celebrating? It's a woman that many of us admire. In fact, I started watching her when I was very young, when I didn't even know that I was going to end up on TV. But I'd wake up every morning and I'd see her on TV hosting the morning show. And the kind of questions she would ask her guests, I'd be wondering, hey, how's a woman so tough? But that's why I learned to admire her. And then even beyond that, we're celebrating her because she's promoted inclusivity, she's promoted the welfare of women and children, the minority. And interestingly, she's described herself once as the minority of a minority. What exactly does that mean? I'm sure when I mention her name, you'll be excited to listen to her speak to us. So please, let's welcome the Shamima.
Thank you, thank you.
You look lovely. And I always say, you need to teach me how to match, your veil with...
Don't do that, because me too, I'm learning from you a lot. So every day, actually.
When I should be saying that.
You have it well together, man.
Thank you, and
Thank
you
so
too.
much,
Even before we get to your recent shenanigans,
I know.
Let's talk a bit about your journey. And even before that, I mean, you promote the minority, children, and the privilege. How did you feel watching these kids showcase their talent?
You saw how I was giving them funds, right? It's just exciting when you see young people, break out of their mold and try to claim their agency and do something for themselves and just go back inside and know that they have such great talents. So I was very inspired by them and their performance,
Did you know what talent you had as a kid?
No.
You didn't? At all?
No.
Do you know what talent you have now? I mean, beyond being such a fantastic speaker and moderator.
Apparently, I was a bit of a talkative at some point. So no wonder I found myself behind the mic. But yeah, I mean, I went through all the different spaces of wanting to be a doctor and lawyer and all of that. But yes, but I think I've always been a bridge builder. That's what my mother and my grandparents and all people who've come through our house always tell me, that I was always very empathetic. So I'm not surprised that I like to build bridges.
Exactly.
Apparently, it's something that I exhibited when I was very young.
Could it also have been your experiences as a child? I mean, I know you've said that for every space that you find yourself, you're more the exception, than the norm.
Exactly.
So would you say that that started from probably experiences you had as a child? What was your childhood like?
So, I have shared on different platforms that mine was a bit of a complex, okay? So there were some complexities with my, upbringing and my family setup. So here's my dad, who came from Upper West Region, settled very early on in Accra and made it for himself, actually. So our house became a melting pot, sort of. So everybody who was coming to Accra for greener pastures would come to our home first, unannounced. So we're always cooking, we're always serving, we're always hosting uncles, aunties, so many people, in Kotobabi there. So I would say that my father was well-to-do
You would
in
say,
our standards.
In your standards, eh?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I went to Morning Star School. So you come from this environment where you too, when you go amongst your people, you too, you are the one everybody's looking up to, right? The one everybody's admiring, the one everybody's wishing, they were in your shoes because, hey, your father is rich and your father is that. And then you go to a different context and you're a minority in that context. And you're not just a minority in terms of maybe you're a northern girl or a Muslim girl, but you also see that the hands are not equal, right? So people who have more than you, more cars than you, more money than you, bring more money to school than you and everything like that. Dinah Entry Hamilton used to sit next to me, actually, in class. So, yeah, I mean, she also has some stories to share. But the little I always had, I always shared. I mean, those who remember me from... So those complexities made me realize very early on that, there will always be inequalities in life. And that the bigger person is the one that shares the little that they have to ensure that everybody feels a sense of belonging and non-discrimination. So those, experiences really shaped my commitment to fighting for inclusion. Because if we all had the choice, we'll all choose the better side.
Of course. Why not? I mean, I'd want to grow up with a silver spoon
in my mouth.
Yes.
Who wouldn't?
But your story is interesting because I've listened to you talk about your maternal grandma not going to school, but ensuring that her children went to school and that eventually also...
Especially my mom. She had
especially
only
your
two
mom?
children, yes.
Okay.
My maternal grandmother gave birth to only two, my uncle and my mother. And my uncle fell off at some point, but she actually took my mother to school in Tamale when she was leaving there. So my mom went to school in Tamale till she was till about class 6 when the coup happened.
Oh, yeah.
And then she went back to Wale to live with her grandmother. And years later, she was taken to my grandfather's house in Wa.
Okay.
And so she used to love to read. Okay. And so an uncle came back from the university in the evening. They didn't used to have lights. They used to have lanterns, you know. But this evening hours was shea butter with cotton. Yes.
Okay.
They used to call it Nayolong Bele or something like that in Wale. So shea butter and cotton. So when everybody goes to sleep, she picked up anything she saw. So she was laying on her tummy and reading. So my uncle came across her that way and said, did you go to school? Because they didn't even know she had gone to school way back in Tamale. And she said yes. And he asked her if she would like to go to school again. And she said yes. So that's how she went back to school. She was a bit older, but she caught up. She was always smart. Okay?
I see.
So I'm like, you can imagine how many more of her stories could have emerged if they had access and opportunity, you know, and how many more Shamimas can emerge if the places where I come from, in the villages, girls in those communities had the kinds of opportunities that I had.
What's the challenge with girls in those communities? Why is it so difficult?
It's poverty. It's poverty.
Is that the only reason? Because I'm sure that even for a lot of people who probably had the chance to go to school, they'll tell you that they didn't necessarily come from rich backgrounds, but they were still, you know, encouraged to go to school. So is it just poverty, or is it also a mentality issue?
It's 90% poverty, because poverty affects your mindset. When you're hungry, you see going to school as a luxury. Because you all have to go to the farm and bring food. You have to go to the market and sell. Being in school for 6, 7 years, when you go to school, you don't bring any food home. When you come back home, you want to eat. So the practicalities of, you know, living every day makes the choice very easy for people. They need the hands on the farms. They need the hands in the market. They need the hands at home to cook and serve. Do you see it? So it sometimes takes outliers within these contexts to say that in spite of the hardships, we would make the collective sacrifices for our sons or our daughters to go to school. In some families, they did rotation. So when they used to do, you know, morning and afternoon, so you go and herd the cattle in the morning, come back home, your brother will come back from school. Some families that did those rotations as well. And some families were also maybe a bit well-to-do, so they could afford to allow their children, you know, to go to school. So poverty creeps in manifests in so many ways that, you know, if you don't take care, you think that it's just people not taking the opportunity, but there are real barriers, you know.
And I'm sure it's one of the things that you've also been fighting since you got the platform, trying to encourage, especially women from your community to aspire for more.
Exactly.
That started from you and aspiring for more, because like you said, you didn't even know what your talent was.
No.
You had been told you were talkative.
Yes.
When did you decide to make this talkative tag a profession?
It's actually from the university.
Okay.
So I tell so I went from, from Morning Star, I went to Holy Child. Even Holy Child, it was largely a Christian school. And at the time, I remember when we even got admission and we went there, we're told, my parents were told to take my prayer mat like back home, and there's no time for prayers. But let me just quickly add that Holy Child has made me proud. Okay. Because after me, my cousin would go there, Rahat. Rahat would become the first female head girl, a Muslim head girl of Holy Child. As we speak today, Holy Child has an association for the Muslims. They are allowed to fast. They have a teacher patron who takes them out of the school on Eid days to celebrate Eid. So for me, that is a sign of a progressive, you know, society and a progressive school that recognizes that talents abound. And talents don't have color. Or not to have religion or caste. If you're talented and you're smart, you should have the right to have quality education. You know, and people say, oh, how about you create your own schools? But you forget that the history of inequality and underdevelopment was deliberate. When, you know, the first school in northern region, the entire northern, was first secondary school, Tamale Secondary School, was 1950. 18-something was when infantry thing is almost 200 years, if I'm not exaggerating. The first senior high school. So there are those historical disparities, okay? So it's a bit of luxury to say that, oh, go and also set up your schools, because the gap is so huge. It will take so long and a deliberate effort to bridge those gaps. And we don't even create cohesive societies by disaggregating, you know, the actors in those societies. If we want to create a peaceful society, we must ensure that this society recognizes all of us. And that's what Nkrumah wanted to do when he made the boarding school system and allowed to just blur the tribal, you know, tribal lines, because our society was almost disintegrating. So.
You seem to be cut from a different cloth, because ideally for a child who has just gone to secondary school, all she's known is her religion, most likely, and she's told she cannot pray in school, she cannot use her mat. Now going into the university and taking up such a position, naturally you'd be timid, you know, and you start feeling like the minority that society has forced you to become. So for you to want to take up that position, even when you probably were feeling, I'm not sure if you were feeling that way.
I was feeling that way because I asked up to that, I don't know what pushed me. And you know, level 100, you're all working with friends and groups. So when we finished, I remember I told my group, oh, they should let us go and find out what it takes to volunteer. Nobody was interested in working with me. They said they were going to a Kwafu Hall to eat. They are still there. I always laugh about them. You know, they said, well, it was meant for you. It was not for us. So look at me working alone to Radio Universe at level 100 to find out when the comfort of the group, you know, I left the comfort of the group and walked. So sometimes, yes, I agree, we have to take the opportunities as and when, you know. But again, it's also about the confidence and self-belief. But there's also a bit of divine direction in it as well. We can't, because sometimes the things that I've done, it's not because I feel I'm so extra special. I just felt pushed, you know, to do it.
Maybe you might think you're not extra special, but we think you are very special because, again, I'm going back to how you probably even landed a show, a morning show that everybody was watching. And I'll tell you, me and my sister, I mean, at a point, we had finished school, we were jobless, we were just home. And so every morning we would wake up and the first thing we want to watch is Shamima on Good Morning Ghana.
Good Morning Ghana.
That's the first time I got to know about you. I want to know how you landed that job and how you were able to even, you know, separate yourself as that woman who was still able to ask the tough questions and still deliver results.
Okay, so you see, I told you the context. The confidence also comes from knowing that you know. So there's a primary confidence that comes from knowledge, you know, and then you build on to the other things. But it started a bit. It started on City FM. Because I started radio in 2008. But even before that, I used to work with an NGO. After school, I started doing development work. So that actually opened my eyes again to the deep, deep inequalities that exist. And we're working in mostly poor infrastructure communities, Nima, Mamobi, Newtown, and then some communities up north, right? And we're talking about rights, we're talking about voice. So that's really where I recognized very early the importance of empowerment, not only by giving resources, but voice empowerment, where you give people information and knowledge, one, about their rights, two, about how to assert those rights, three, about identifying duty bearers in their communities. Is it the MP? Is it the assemblyman? Is it your local chief, your local imams? These are all duty bearers in your community. So when there's a problem, who are the stakeholders within the community that you should be inviting for you to collectively find a solution? You see, so those were the groundings for me when I recognized that voice can really be a powerful tool for change and even, you know, mobilizing. So yes, we did that. Then I started coming on TV Africa as a panelist. People don't know that. This is 2016, 2017.
To discuss
2017, I was a newspaper review panelist. And that newspaper, your newspaper review.
You were a panelist?
Yes.
Were you representing any political group?
So this one was just by chance. A friend was going on the show, called me, because we all did the leadership program together where they taught us public speaking. So he said I should watch him and give him feedback. So, and that's the first time I tuned into that program. I gave him feedback. I said, oh, but this is nice. Tell the producer that I don't mind coming on. So I was also invited, and I became a regular Friday member of the show. This was TV Africa newspaper review. Yes, people don't know it. But that must have been 2017. It was from then. So you see, when you, steps, you know, you take one step, it snowballs into, From there, I was noticed and invited to City FM when Bernard was going out for school. So initially, I was to host the morning show, but the criticism was really bad.
So you did try?
Yes, I tried the morning show. I was doing newspaper review with Bernard with the intention of hosting the breakfast show.
But why did they have a problem with your views?
That my voice is too small for radio. My voice was not an early morning radio. There were even editorials done on that.
Wow.
Okay. So very soon, my confidence really was hit, you know. So I realized that, okay, morning show, news magazine program is not for me. So I was moved to current affairs news. And that's where afternoon radio started with me. Afternoon current affairs, campaign trail. One day I'll tell my story. 2008 campaign trail. Before your Asampes will come, there was no current affairs afternoon talk show.
You started
Campaign trail started it.
Was it your idea?
It was my boss's idea. I can't take the glory for that. But I was the first host on campaign trail. We were moving across. You see this thing that you're doing where you go community, please. The blueprint is with us.
We need to come and pacify you,
yes, we went from community to community. We went outside. We did live, you know, broadcasting from communities where MPs will be there, candidates will debate, we're linking, so we're on. So campaign trail really is where I cut my teeth. And so after election, I was like, oh, well, what happens? I'm going back to my NGO work, Eyewitness News. Then I was put on Eyewitness News, which is really where the takeoff came.
I see.
So a year later, I came on to Metro Television.
That's interesting.
And the rest is history, they say.
It is interesting because as a woman, again, from people saying she doesn't have the voice for morning radio, she's not really cut for the hard talk, to now going to do Eyewitness News.
Wrong. And you know what? I ended the drought of awards at City FM because City FM current affairs programs had not yet received any award. 2011, Eyewitness News won the CIMG Radio Program of the Year. I won Radio News Broadcaster of the Year. And I also am the reason why Joy FM has the 5:30 program.
You forced them. You forced them to start their show first.
So Eyewitness was 5:30 to 7. Joy was 6 to 7. So when Eyewitness was really top there, it was really hitting them.
But what was one of your toughest interviews ever?
I had quite a number. I had quite a number. You know, it was my show that we played when the president was in the Eastern region, meeting party people, or the all die be die comment, the infamous all die be die comment that will define the character of the campaign then. And I was on air when the producer brought the insert. And we're almost done. So I didn't even hear the voice. We're almost done when our correspondent dropped the voice. So they just gave me a note that sign out and say that meanwhile, the MPP presidential candidate has been addressing party faithfuls in the Eastern region and play the insert. So that's how I signed out. So I actually didn't even hear the voice because immediately I signed out. You know, I left the studio and we're talking outside. I never really heard what was said, till the thing took a life of its own. Apparently, a few hours afterwards, all media colleagues were around looking for the voice, and by the following morning, it took a life of its own. And I was not forgiven for that in the camps, You heard the feedback. There was a bit of an upset. I don't know why, whether they think, because, you know, I think when you're behind the mic, you take the glory, but you take the fall
as well
for so many things. So that episode generated a lot of negative resentment against me in some quarters.
As a journalist, we're also always told that you have to be careful what you say. Especially when it borders on tribalism.
Very sensitive matters.
It's not an easy job. And you don't have a say necessarily because you're supposed to project the views of your viewers, your listeners, and not your
and
personal
even
views.
your panel, your guests.
But that's not an easy one.
No, because sometimes in the heat of the conversation, your mind, you don't have a full control of everything. So sometimes mistakes will be made. Sometimes you will not, because as somebody is talking, maybe your producer is saying something, so you've missed something.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've not been able to respond to it. It's like too many moving parts with a live program, but sometimes people don't understand, the dynamics, and they expect you, or somebody makes a claim. You can't immediately verify that claim. But if your representative on the show cannot, clarify that matter, why do you expect me, the host, to know everything about
but they take
your
it out
story?
On the host all the time.
Yeah, they always take it out on the host. That's the whole thing, as if you should know everything. But sometimes the fact is, he said, if this person said you did this and this person, immediately, now because of even social media, you're able to do some quick,
research
check.
Here and there,
But first, it was not like that. They expected you to know, to push, and they'll get angry. And one year, in the beginning of the year, I had a standoff with Kobe from the NDC. Towards the end of the year, I had a standoff with Eslo Owusu, and they were all claiming they all know my paymasters. And I said, well, I must be very rich then.
You must be.
Yeah, I mean, we had serious fights.
But do you
on air and off air?
I can imagine what they'll probably say.
But
now.
We are fine. I met Kobe recently.
And
we took a photo.
Okay, what about Esla? Have you
Esla
been
met her?
able to?
No, we are
okay,
fine.
You're
we
good.
are fine. I mean, we all understand this job. It's the job. And sometimes it's the heat of the moment. And it's actually the flag you get from your party people if they think that you didn't, defend the party as much as they should,
Do you think that they'll probably think, Shamima, I'm not surprised. I used to say, we knew her paymasters.
Oh, aren't they saying that? No,
but
now
she's come out openly.
The thing that I'm most proud about myself, I never took favors from anyone of them.
None of them?
None. Not a cedi, not a job, not even offers to go on Hajj. Because they would give tickets to journalists. And that's one thing, because I've always been very, very smart for my own good.
Yeah. But the MPP as well really wanted you to join their party, as well as the NDC.
Not in recent times. It must have been years ago, and I'll tell you this for the first time now, possibly. When I was in the media, even before the media, I told you, even before mainstream media, when I was just a panelist, and I used to call into radio programs, okay? So you are hearing this for the first time.
So you were one of the serial callers?
I was a caller.
Oh, my word.
Because I've always had a spirit of activism.
Okay.
So even though I was not in politics, I was working in NGOs. When there were issues, I will call into Joy, I will call into Radio Gold. Okay. So there was a day Radio Gold was discussing who should pair meals. And Betty Mold's name came up. I'm not even sure Auntie Betty knows this, but those who are there know this story. So I was driving myself to my workplace, Legal Resources Center at the time, and I called in to make a case for why we must consider a woman. So some of us are very consistent.
Interesting.
We have been consistent over years. And those who care to follow our trajectory know that ours is a battle of conscience and justice and equity more than anything else. So I called to make the case for Betty Mold Idris. And after that call, Fifi Kwete called me. Fifi Kwete knows the story. And says that, hey, Papa J wants to say hello to me. That, yes, Papa J. So I spoke to Papa J. He said that was a brilliant contribution. Yes, I went to the home, I met them and all of that. And from those anglings, I did get invitations, even before I started City FM. To join the party. NDC. And I got some invitations to join the NPP. But I was this young girl and I was not ready for any partisan politics. And so City was a better option, for me.
And here you are
Whilst
today.
I was in City, there was a day I got a call from, is it Akinting? He's an
the
industrialist.
Right? Yes. I don't know if I got his name right, but I think
that name.
I've heard it too.
I'm sure in those quarters, somebody would know. And his question was, young lady, how old are you? Are you 40? You know, he said, are you 40? I said, no. Or say, are you a lawyer? This time I was on Metro.
Okay.
I said, no, I'm not a lawyer. Oh, I'm just 32. I was 30.
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not 40. I said, that's disappointing. Apparently, in their scouts for possible running mates,
he
wanted to propose me.
You are
because
kidding.
He said that he had watched me and I'm a brilliant young woman. The lawyers have led this country 67 years, or where are we? We need somebody who is able to create out of nothing. So we should break that jinx.
Yeah.
Anybody who is industrious, who has ideas, who has energy, who has integrity, you know, should be allowed to aspire to the presidency.
Yeah.
And for this year's election, that person is John Dramani Mahama.
Hey, Shamima.
The experienced pair of hands.
What's the reason? Is it because also of Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, the fact that you are a women's activist, and so for you, that sealed the deal for you, or is it more beyond that?
It sealed it, but it's definitely more beyond that, because after the decision, what next? Okay, so we want a vehicle that is actually committed to the cause. So it has to be more than just the nomination, but the real commitment and the consistency.
Yeah.
You know, he did it 4 years ago. He did it. For me, convinced me, as it should many of our women, because I'm saying that advocacy has some end results, right? And if you demand something and you get it, shouldn't you be happy? Shouldn't you give it meaning?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it means we are being hypocritical.
I see.
It means we don't want it like we say we want it. And that's a message to the women's movement. We've been making these calls for decades.
Yes.
Decades. We made it of all the political parties that at least at this time of our history, Bella, we should consider a woman running mate. And these two major political parties are the only vehicles that can give life to that call. Somebody considered it and repeated the decision.
Yes.
If you don't reward that decision, and because you can only bridge this equity gap either through appointment or election.
Okay. Shamima, especially for the Gen Zs who didn't grow up watching you,
they didn't grow up watching me. Yeah.
A lot of energy exhibited on the stage, and I mean,
you.
I thought that was really impressive.
Thank you, my sister.
Thank you for inspiring
You're doing
us.
brilliantly as well.
Thank you.
You're doing brilliantly.
Thank
I've followed your own growth path.
Aww.
It's astronomical.
Allah Kasha. Shamima Muslim has been my guest on the Day Show. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you the very best.
Love you always.
Well, yes, definitely. We'll be coming your way with more next week. But until then, we've been hanging out with the New Level dance group, and now Shamima Muslim. And we're asking you what you make of this. But we're not going just yet. We're going to play a game with her. And there's one more question. In fact, good. There's one more question. You know, we asked a question at the beginning, whether journalists should, you know, engage in partisan politics, etc. I'd want to find out from her what she makes of this. But we'll play a game before that. Stay tuned.